Luka Doncic is one of the most extraordinary players we've ever seen on the NBA court. The youngest player to have a 35-point triple-double in succession, breaking the Big O's record, and only the fourth player in history to record it since 1984. He's also the youngest player in NBA playoff history with a 40-point triple-double. At only 21 years and 167 days, Luka is the youngest member of any All-NBA first team, and he's also the fourth youngest player to record 5,000 points. But before all of that, in the 2017-18 season, Luka was the youngest EuroLeague MVP, and later in the same season, he was named the Final Four MVP, being the youngest receiver of that award as well. In 2017, at just 18 years old, he led his national team to the Eurobasket gold medal game. No wonder the Spanish newspaper Marca named him El Niño Maravilla, or the Boy Wonder in English. Do you believe in the hype that players overseas get? Do you think the EuroLeague is a legit league, filled with quality teams and players? Well, the NBA media didn't exactly think so when Luka declared for the draft back in 2018. So let's see what some of the journalists and analysts had to say about Luka before he entered the league, and after that, we'll jump into the present to see if Luka has any more doubters left. ESPN's college basketball analyst Fran Broussard said this: "I don't think it's fair to put him on this moniker of the best young European player to ever come over here. I think that would be unfair. If I were to rate him the way that teams rate guys, which is all-star, starter, rotation player, fringe player, I would say he's going to be a successful starter in the NBA, but I do not see him as a transcendent talent in the way we would look at Dirk over a 20-year career." Fran had been following Luka's growth since his early days, and even though he wasn't too pessimistic about him, these statements just tell you how wrong the analysts were proven by Luka in just his rookie season alone. Max Kellerman, another first-take analyst, was also skeptic about Luka. "The only thing that matters is getting the best player. Some of these other guys are good, but I'm not talking about Doncic, who apparently doesn't react well to pressure on the ball. They're not great if you have to be a primary ball handler." Later in the season, after Luka had defenders on skates all year round, Max said that he thinks that Luka is the best player taken in the draft in the previous 3 years, including Ben Simmons. "He's a franchise player. All that hype about him? He's the best version of what you could have hoped for. I love watching him play too." From somebody that has trouble with pressure defense to becoming a franchise player, does Max have that much work to do on his consistency, or is Luka just that good? One of the biggest critics in the sports world, Skip Bayless, didn't have high hopes for Luka due to his lack of athleticism. That's my takeaway. He doesn't pop athletically. Doncic at 6'7" will get exposed for all of the inadequacies that Dirk struggled with. Dirk's not a great athlete. Dirk doesn't have explosive quickness. Dirk isn't physical. Well, that's what's going to happen with Doncic. I'm not saying that Luka is setting the NBA world on fire. I'm not sure that he's going to be a dominating NBA player. His colleague, Shannon Sharpe, seemed to agree with him on this statement. Fast forward a little bit into the season, and even Skip couldn't hold back his excitement about Luka. Skip completely changed his mind. "You're going to look up in 15 years with Luka Doncic, and he's going to be a top 7 scorer in league history. Luka's going to score a bunch of points. He's going to score 24 points per game for 12 straight seasons. He's just a natural scorer. He was in Europe, and he is here." When Skip first compared Luka to Dirk, it was clear that he was stereotyping Euro basketball and not actually making a fair comparison. Luka even proved his praising words wrong with an average of 26.7 points per game for his career, or almost 30 points per game if we do not include his rookie season. Another doubter of Luka due to his lack of athleticism was analyst Fran Broussard of In the Zone. "This kid is slower than rush hour traffic. He doesn't have it. He struggled with quick defenders. We tend to over-sensationalize European basketball. I don't see Steve Nash in him, and I definitely don't see Larry Bird." On the very same episode, former NBA point guard Rashad Phillips seemed to agree that Luka is not a prospect worth taking number 1, and even went out of his way to say that he wouldn't touch Luka with a 10-foot pole, and labeled Luka as not worthy of a top 5 consideration and a second-round pick. Later in Luka's rookie season, Broussard changed tracks, saying, "Luka Doncic, I think he's going to be a multi-time MVP. Several years from now, he might be the best player in the NBA." While Phillips tweeted a picture with Luka, and he publicly apologized for being wrong about him. They seem to over-sensationalize the use of physicality and strength in the NBA to win games, which came out a little bit ironic. On The Will Cain Show, host Will Cain actually sounded optimistic about taking Luka number 1. "No doubt, no hesitation. Take Luka with the number 1 overall pick. Luka's the guard wing 2, 3 from Real Madrid and Barcelona. And he's what, 18 or 19 years old? He spent the last 3 or 4 years since he was 16 playing professional basketball against men. Men. Much higher level than the NCAA. Will was actually the one that got it right. that playing against grown men gets you more ready for the NBA than any level of college basketball. And since Luka was able to dominate over there, he was prepared to take on the NBA as well. One thing that he got wrong, though, that Luka never played for Barcelona. He only played for their biggest rivals, Real Madrid. While not being a full-time analyst, former NBA player Gilbert Arenas was also one of the many to think that Luka was too slow for the league. I didn't know how he was going to get his shot off. He then said that it only took one game for him to say, "Oh, I was wrong." Agent Zero also added that the argument Luka made, that it's easier to score in the NBA than in Europe, turned out to be true because the NBA players and analysts in general tend to focus most on athleticism, while Europeans have the fundamentals. When we saw Luka controlling the game at his own pace, Arenas knew that that boy was there to eat. One of his biggest doubters throughout his career is First Take's very own Stephen A. Smith. In May of 2018, when asked about Phoenix's first pick, he said, "Absolutely for the Phoenix Suns, DeAndre Ayton should be the overall #1 pick. But it's incredibly important that they, the Phoenix Suns, don't mess this up. He's right there in Arizona, right down the road. You need a box office attraction who's a big boy, the size, athleticism, and the combination of all those things with this gift that simply can't be taught. I don't care about this kid from Europe who I understand is a 6'8" point guard." Well, it's safe to say it didn't take long for Stephen A. to change his mind. In just December of 2018, when asked about the Rookie of the Year, Stephen A. said, "You want to see the Rookie of the Year? It's not DeAndre Ayton. It's this kid Luka Doncic. That's who it is. The kid is special. The kid is sensational. Just 19 years of age. First they found Dirk 20 years ago, and now they found this kid." This wasn't the first time Stephen A. had underestimated the EuroLeague's teams and players, as he had done the exact same thing with Kristaps Porzingis a couple of years prior. But of course, Luka has proven his stereotypical views to be as wrong as they can get. That didn't make Stephen A. fully change his mind though, as later he's had outrageous takes on how he would take Anthony Davis over Luka, and most recently, before the start of the Suns vs. Mavs series in the 2022 playoffs, Devin Booker over him as well. For the purposes of this playoffs, I take Booker, because Luka doesn't shoot with accuracy the way that Booker does, especially not from the free throw line. That matters to me. Long term, in the future, with Luka's incredible upside, maybe, but right now, for the purpose of the playoffs, I'm going with Devin Booker. If you want to talk about cold takes, this is one of the coldest ever, because in the remaining 2 games since this take, Luka's first half performances were enough to outshine Booker's full Game 6 and 7 performances. It's fair to say that Luka's going to continue proving Stephen A. wrong, as long as he doesn't change his mind. But I guess that for every LeBron James, there's a Skip Bayless. So maybe this is going to be a long and lasting relationship for years to come. For some odd reason, NBA media and analysts were hard on Luka when questioned about his ability to succeed in the NBA. They all seem to acknowledge his potential now, and many of them agree that he's already a top player in the league. So what do you guys think? Will Luka have to still prove his doubters wrong? Or is it about time they start realizing that Luka's here right now, and he's not going anywhere anytime soon?